Hey, real estate agents out there, have you ever wanted to be a better negotiator, but you just didn't know where to start from? It's interesting because I was in a mastermind this past week, and to a person, every single agent on there said, hey, negotiations is a big part of what we do as real estate agents. However, when I posed the question, what's the number one or number two technique that they use when they find themselves in negotiations? It was crickets. Nobody had an answer. Nobody had been practicing or was being really intentional about it. So they got me to thinking, why don't I share 3 simple techniques that you can implement today to instantaneously become a better negotiator. My name is Guillermo Salas, and I'm a former attorney turned real estate agent. I've served over 1,500 clients in my time and created my business in Philadelphia, but I've been running it from a different continent for the last 2.5 years. I live in Spain. So if you want to learn all the tips and techniques that I've created to create multiple leverage businesses, right? Time is money, and multiple passive income streams, then please hit the subscribe button. Please like my content. And if you want to hear about all of the videos I'm putting out before everyone else, hit that bell up there and get that notification. So let's jump into it. First thing, but let's set the table first. Like, why is negotiating so important? Well, when you think about it, we negotiate at every step of the way. Every conversation, every interaction is a form of negotiation, right? Especially in our professional lives. When you're trying to set the appointment, like, yeah, get them to go negotiate, get to meet with me. And then when you get to the appointment for the listing, like, hey, agree to work with me, to set this price, agree to pay my commission. All these are negotiations and a series of negotiations. And it's funny because we'll go out there as real estate agents and practice all these different techniques, right? We'll learn how to write the agreement of sale, master our listing presentation, master our buyer consultation. However, negotiations is even more pervasive, right? We use it in every single thing we do, not only in our professional lives, but our personal lives. And like, for you parents out there, you know, negotiating, getting your kids to bed is a negotiation. Like, literally all of it is a negotiation. And I just find it interesting that we'll spend time, practicing scripts off FSBOs and expireds and just ad nauseam, right? We can go down the list of all the things that we practice as real estate agents. However, we don't stop and take care and become masters of the thing that we use even more than everything else, and that's negotiating. So like everything else, it's a system, it requires practice, and to get into it, I just want to make it as simple as possible. So I'm going to share 3 of those simplest techniques that you can use. And number 1 is ask more questions. Sometimes we don't even ask enough questions, right? So you just got to be there, right? Asking questions, writing down. You can't OD on writing it down, right? Write down responses. Listen more than you talk. That's why God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth. And the types of questions you want to ask are not the yes and no type. And that's another thing that we fall into the mistake of. Hey, do you want to sell now? Yes. Well, then now that's the end of the story. You're not gathering any more information. Ask open-ended questions. What's that mean? Well, open-ended questions is just a fancy way of saying a question that doesn't have a yes or no answer, right? So instead of asking, hey, do you want to sell right now? It's like, why do you want to sell right now, right? Or how's it going to feel if you sell within the next 6 months? How and why are great, just sort of use those, like if you're starting the sentence with how, why you're on the right track in terms of open-end questions. And then when you ask the question, shut up, stop talking, right? Let them talk. Us salespeople, sometimes it's hard to let other people talk. Well, your job here when you're negotiating and when you're helping your clients is to listen more than you speak. So ask open-ended questions, let them speak. And then I want to give you tip 1A on this one, right? Ask clarifying questions. And I'm going to give you a good one for that. So oftentimes, well, not oftentimes, language is subjective, right? What one thing means to one person means something completely different to the next person. You'll hear the same exact sentence and 2 different people will come up with opposite meanings of it oftentimes. So when somebody says, hey, I want to sell quickly, you should be asking the question, like, well, what do you mean by that? Like, what do you mean by quickly, right? Because quickly to you might be 30 days because you want to get your commission check, right? Right. But for them, it might be 60 days, 90 days. The other type of qualified question is, for instance, I had a great example where somebody said, hey, I want to sell a house so I can move closer to where I work so I don't have to commute as long. And the great clarifying question you can ask is, well, why is that important to you, right? Don't just stop like, hey, I learned that they don't want to commute. Well, why they don't want to commute so far could have a huge emotional underpinning for them. And wouldn't you want to figure that out in terms of a negotiating thing, right? So ask, like, why is that important to you? In that situation, I'm sure that's sort of quite a number of times, is like they were missing out, that person was missing out on a lot of the life events of their child, first step, first word, things of that sort. And so asking why is that important to you, or how would that change your life if you were able to sell in 30 days are great clarifying questions. So that's tip number 1. Questions, ask more questions, ask clarifying questions, and ask open-ended questions. So that's all grouped into that one tip. Tip number 2 is create empathy, right? People got to know that you care, right? And there's some good techniques to get them to sort of feel that empathy. And the simplest one is just repeat back what they're saying to you, right? Not only does it create empathy, but they will understand, like they'll be like, hey, this guy or gal is just, they understand me, they get me, they're listening to me, they're understanding my goals. Somebody says, hey, I want to sell this house. It's really important for me to move into this neighborhood because I want to put my children into this school. Saying like, oh, it seems it's really important for you to go to this school. Yeah, it is. Well, no duh, you just told me that. Like, so build that empathy. Very simple technique is just repeating back what they said to you. And that's a little bit labeling, mirror matching, sort of tonality, that kind of thing will absolutely help you build that empathy. Repeat back. And some people, like one of the greatest books on negotiating is Chris Voss, Never Split the Difference. He talks about just repeating the last 3 or 4 words that they said to you, right? And that's a great way to repeat back to them and just get clarification, right? Make sure we're on the same page. Is it seems like, or it sounds like, selling your house quickly within 3 months is super important to you. Is that correct? Right? Great way to build empathy, build trust, and you're going to be a bit better negotiator if you do that consistently. And it's such a simple thing to practice, right? It's slowing down, listen to what they say, and just repeating it back. So that's step number 2. Okay, and now tip number 3 is just learn how to say no without actually saying no, right? You ever hear when somebody says no to you, like you just have this visceral reaction, like, oh my God, I don't like that person. I'm just tuning them out. So learning how to say no without saying no is a huge technique. And it requires, like everything else, a little bit of practice, right? So when somebody says, hey, I want to list this house for $500,000, when you just show them a CMA that it's worth no more than $250,000. So rather than say, no, you're crazy, man. Like, how am I going to sell that for no, this is how you say it. How? It's like, listen, I'd love to help you out, but how am I going to do that? How am I going to sell your house for $500,000? Love to get you to what you want. Love to help you achieve your goals, but how am I going to do that? Again, I mentioned Chris Voss. Those who can disagree without being disagreeable have mastered the art of negotiation. So get comfortable with that line of questioning, because inherently people want to be fair or seen as fair. And so if somebody's asking you a question, rather than say, no, we can't do that, like, hey man, I'd love to help you out, but how can I do that? Or how am I going to be able to raise $1 million in 5 minutes? Right? He uses that negotiation that as an example in his book. Well, there you go. 3 tips that you can execute right away today to make you a better negotiator, right? Number 1, ask a bunch of questions. And subset of that is open-ended questions and clarifying questions. Number 2 is build empathy. And then number 3 is learn how to say no without actually saying no. So the cool thing about this is, like, these concepts are simple, but they only become easy with practice. And so I'm going to cover a bunch of other topics like this and go deeper on other techniques that will sort of elevate your game on negotiating. So if you hit the subscribe button, if you like this content, and if you hit that little bell up there, notification, you'll hear about all the content I'm putting out there, and especially on this topic, negotiating, because we're just scratching the surface. We're going to go deeper. And if you don't, if you're anxious and you want to learn more, because we've got loads and loads of this stuff, and you want to learn deeper, more about this topic on negotiating, then just schedule a consultation with me. The link's below. Get on my calendar, and I'm happy to go through it with you. Have a great day. And in the meantime, until next video, go out there and cause and create miracles.